chain smoke and I say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised.
First off, let me just say this video would not have been made without help or inspiration from 3 lovely ladies who each helped me separately but inspired me to make this video. First off, Celia Farber, whose book, Serious Adverse Events, An Uncensored History of AIDS, that came out in 2006, is being republished March 23rd, 2023. And I helped. She hired me to help her find the original sources, and I'm pretty proud of that. Also, A Girl, who sent me some information, and also Natalie Denise, who most recently made a video about some of this topic here. I'll leave links to Celia's Substack, since her Twitter isn't back yet, and A Girl's Twitter, and also Natalie Denise's Twitter and YouTube channel. New York Magazine, Intelligencer, Jeffrey Epstein, February 16, 2023. Newly revealed Jeffrey Epstein emails are pretty gross. By Matt Staib. Virgin Islands Attorney General Denise George was accusing JP Morgan Chase of benefiting from its business with Epstein from 2008 to 2013. A filing in the case revealed a cache of emails from former JP Morgan executive Jess Staley to the convicted sex criminal. The filing, which opposes JP Morgan's attempt to dismiss the lawsuit, states that between 2008 and 2010, Staley and Epstein emailed each other over 1,000 times, with Staley using his work email to contact the pedophile, who was sentenced to 18 months in prison for soliciting prostitution of a minor during that period. At the time, Staley was the head of JP Morgan Chase's private banking division, and Epstein was known for connecting him to rich clients who would sign up for the bank's services. Over the years, the records show that they chatted about Little St. James and how Staley could negotiate a better salary. Epstein also sent Staley pictures of young women, and after one meeting in 2010, Staley looked back on their time together. Staley, quote, "That was fun. Say hi to Snow White." Epstein, quote, "What character would you like next?" Staley, "Beauty and the Beast." The lawsuit argues that JP Morgan, quote, "continued to facilitate and sustain Epstein's sex trafficking after the 2008 conviction, and that the bank financially benefited off its relationship with Epstein by allowing his payments to his recruiters and victims to be processed." Staley has already taken a hit for his connections to Epstein. In November 2021, he resigned from his position as Barclays CEO after an internal investigation by the British multinational. Even though Staley said previously that he had been, quote, "transparent and open about his connections to Epstein in the past." But on New Year's Eve 2022, days after suing JP Morgan, Virgin Islands Governor Albert Bryan Jr. fired Attorney General Denise George, despite her winning a $105 million settlement with the Epstein estate in November 2022. Right before Joe Biden left the Virgin Islands while he was down there on vacation. Does that remind you of something?
I said, "You're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here." And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money." Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Well, it turns out that Jess Staley has a brother named Peter Staley.
Our moderator tonight is AIDS and LGBTQ plus rights activist Peter Staley. In 1992, Peter Staley and other members of the Treatment and Data Committee founded the Treatment Action Group, which successfully lobbied for radical restructuring of the management of the government's AIDS research effort.
Yeah, Tag blocked me a while ago on Twitter. I didn't say anything to them, but they blocked me when this asshole, quote, science writer, Ben Ryan, who I call Ben Rye the science guy, was arguing with me and bitching about me and my stance with antiretroviral therapy. So he blocked me and Tag blocked me at the same time.
Peter Staley went from a young trader on Wall Street to a crucial figure in a radical advocacy group that literally made life-saving medication affordable for those living with HIV and AIDS. After being diagnosed himself in 1985, Peter joined ACT UP in its first days and helped create a movement. At the time, there were over 20,000 reported cases of HIV. It wasn't until 2 years later, that a treatment hit the market. In March of 1987, the FDA approved AZT, the first ever treatment for the disease. Finally, there was hope. And because of Peter Staley's hard work, leadership, and radical protest, the cost of AZT was lowered by over 20%. Now, more than half of the global population living with HIV have access to treatment, the highest ever. Peter's core belief in helping those living with HIV or AIDS has always been knowledge equals power.
Because obviously, the problem with AZT was the price, not the fact that it was killing people. But it made it look like AIDS, so...
Please join me in welcoming Peter Staley and Dr. Anthony Fauci to the forum.
Thank you.
Tony.
Peter.
Normally when we talk after 6 p.m., we both have a glass of Pinot Noir in front of us.
Right. You going to pull out a Pinot Noir?
Yeah.
Only Peter. Thank you.
Yeah. Good Phil. In 1984, you were appointed NIAID's director. And a few years later, you met AIDS activism. And and Larry Kramer walloped you, and ACT UP was born. You started meeting immediately with Bill Ballman in our first year on a regular basis. And we targeted the FDA first with that gigantic demo in 1988, with a series of demands of wanting access before drugs were approved. And to our shock, you let us know a few months later that you shared many of our opinions. And in two major front-page New York Times articles in 1989, first, you endorsed ACT UP's proposal that a specific drug, ganciclovir, that prevented blindness in people with HIV, did not need additional clinical trials. You smacked down Frank Young, the commissioner of the FDA, and he backed down. And then, far bigger, later that summer, you endorsed our major proposal called Parallel Track, which gained access, and by the end of the year, tens of thousands of patients were on the second antiviral, DDI. And then, after we won all this stuff from the FDA, we turned our focus to you and the NIH, and we found lots of problems. We did not think that the clinical trials group that you had created, the AIDS clinical trials group, was up to snuff. It was just studying AZT again and again and again. It didn't have many women enrolled. It didn't have people of color enrolled. And we went after you on a number of fronts, and I got arrested in front of your building in early '91, even though we were still having dinners off and on to discuss all these issues.
And he goes on and kisses Fauci's ass, but it shows you how close they were over many years. Kind of how Jeff Staley and Epstein were so close for many years.
And you did eventually advise 7 presidents. I tried to find out who else has advised that many. There's actually somebody that beat you that advised 8 presidents.
Averell Harriman.
No. Who's that? J. Edgar Hoover.
Really?
Yes.
Is that right? Oh God, what a comparison.
It's kind of an accurate comparison. Fucking stoned.
I got